was at Trinity. I mean, I came here, I did an anti-apartheid meeting at the University of Cork.
Tell us more about that.
No, it was.
What was that like?
It was very good. The Irish anti-apartheid, they arranged these meetings, and they said to me, "Come, there's a meeting you must address in Cork." Fine, came, and it was at the university. It was very good. The hall was.
The crowd receptive.
Oh, very, very, very much so. The hall was very full, and I'm very Irish.
Really? What marked it as being particularly Irish for you?
You see, for instance, there was an old man here in the hall, white hair, and he says to me, "Now, Mr. Mbeki, can you tell me, have you heard of James Connolly?" So I said, "Yes." So he says, "Have you read anything by James Connolly?" So I said, "No." "Have you heard of Patrick Pearse?" I said, "Yes." "Have you read anything by Patrick Pearse?" "No." I think he mentioned a couple of other people. And he said to me, at the end of the meeting, "I'm going to give you a list of books to read. Because you need to understand the liberation struggle in Ireland, which has gone on for many centuries. Because I think that you must learn some lessons from our struggle, which are going to be important for you in South Africa." So indeed I said, "Fine." I'm saying it was important because you could only get that discussion, that kind of discussion here in Ireland, if you did anti-apartheid meetings in England, as we did. I mean, you'd go to a meeting and they would be asking you questions about what pensions do black people get, what pensions do white people get, that kind of question. Legitimate questions and so on. But here at Cork, the question was, what lessons can you draw from the Irish liberation struggle in order to defeat that regime in South Africa? You would never meet that kind of question in England. But here you would.
It's fascinating.
So it was, I'm saying, it was very Irish. It was Irish. And of course, you had a lot of people in black cassocks there, nuns and brothers and so on in the meeting. Yes. And we engaged it was very, very engaging.
The Irish clergy, both nuns and priests, have had an incredibly far reach in Africa. How positive do you think that influence was, or how do you feel towards particularly religious aid and how that, I suppose, created such a strong link between South Africa and Ireland?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think one of the things that we must understand is during the colonial period, the emergence of the black intelligentsia, it actually came from mission schools. So the missionaries who came out of Europe opened these various schools, and that's really where your first black intelligence emerged from. It's from those mission schools. In the end, though, the churches became a very important part of the broad internal struggle in South Africa, the mobilization of the people to do all sorts of things, plus the global anti-apartheid movement. They played a very, very important role there. So, and it wouldn't matter, people might have come originally from Ireland or whatever else, but the Christian church, and more broadly, the religious communities in South Africa were very central in terms of the mobilization of the population to oppose the apartheid system. And
you're coming from a very left family background. You're coming from presumably something of an anti-clerical emergence, or at least an anti-clerical family. How do you see that strange alliance, and we see it between James Connolly and Patrick Pearse, I suppose, here in Ireland? How do you see that strange alliance between the religious church and its role in South African liberation and then the left?
Well, no, I don't think I don't think anybody in the liberation movement was anti-clerical.
Okay.
They might not be members of a church or anything, or might even be atheist, but they wouldn't be anti-clerical because, you see, you have this majority of the South African population, whether communists, priests, capitalists, who share this common thing, that we've got a system here of white minority rule, which is impacting negatively on all our lives, whether you are a priest or a communist or whatever. And it's in our interest that we act together to get rid of this thing.
So this is a grand alliance?
Oh, absolutely, and it cohered. So you would never find a member of the Communist Party saying, I'm not going to attend this meeting because there's a bishop who's going to speak. No.
I'd like to cross that Rubicon of 1994 and move from the independence struggle into a black governing free South Africa. I was thinking over the week as to that transition when independence leaders now rule an independent country, and I was actually struck by an Irish language poem. And that poem is by an Irish language poet called Kathleen Maud. She wrote in 1963, this poem is called Trowel, which is an Irish word for rage or anger. And it starts off, Tuairdum Cosar na tua go mrishigus go millig an chaksha, which is Irish for hand me a hammer or an axe that I can tear down this house, referring to that process of revolution. And then at the end of the poem, she says, hand me the nails and allow me to build up a new house. But she says, but I'm so tired now. Did you feel that sense of one liberation movement being an appropriate leadership to take over the role of governance? And is leading an independence struggle one thing, but leading a government a very different thing?
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
How did you rise to that challenge?
Well, you know, in a way, what needed to happen once the struggle to remove this white minority regime was won, the situation in South Africa actually more or less dictated what needed to happen. Because here, okay, the apartheid regime is gone, you've got a democratically elected government, and the ANC is the majority party. But what kind of society have you inherited? You've inherited a society where you got these racial divisions. But you want to build a non-racial society out of these various black and white segments of the population. What do you do about that? The history of colonization, 350 years of colonialism, apartheid and all that, has produced these inequalities in society, which unfortunately are also defined in racial terms. How do you address that? You've got a situation where the apartheid system deliberately, consciously, went out of its way to ensure that your black population is as little educated as is possible, deliberately, consciously. What is it that you do to impact on the education and skills